Hey students, welcome back to BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. Our marathon class on Managerial Economics will be over today. As today we begin Unit 5 of Managerial Economics, a very important and high scoring unit that gives you a complete understanding of how the economy behaves at the macro level. In this unit, we will learn about economic growth, economic development, business cycles, the balance of payments and inflation, all of which are essential for understanding how companies, governments and market operates in real life. This unit is also extremely useful for competitive exams and corporate understanding. So let's begin with our first topic, which is economic growth. Economic growth refers to increase in a country's production of goods and services over time. It is a quantitative concept, meaning it deals with numbers such as how much the GDP has increased, how many industries have expanded, or how much per capita income has grown. So, in simple words, we can say that if a country produces more goods and services this year compared to last year, we say that the country has experienced nothing but economic growth. Economic growth is majorly measured through GDP growth, that is gross domestic product, the per capita income or national income, the industrial production. For example, we say that if India's GDP increases from rupees 200 lakh crores to rupees 220 lakh crores, so this rise in rupees 20 lakh crore indicates nothing but the economic growth. Similarly, when the industries like automobiles, IT, pharmaceuticals or real estate, they expand their output, the country experiences growth. So we understand that economic growth is necessary. Why? Because it creates more jobs, it increases the income and it improves the overall economic performance of a nation. That is why we say that the growth is quantitative in nature. Let us now understand the major features of economic growth. This will help you answer 3-mark or 5-mark exam questions very clearly. Right? The first is that we say economic growth is a quantitative concept. That is something we had seen in the last slide. So to understand it first, before we begin with the features, we must know that why are we calling it quantitative concept. Economic growth is only about numbers and the output levels. For example, GDP growth, production increase or rise in income. So it does not show the improvement in the quality of life directly. I hope it is understood. The first feature that we are going to talk here is we say that economic growth is measurable. Growth can be easily measured using the GDP, GNP, per capita income and industrial production data. Right? For example, when the government announces quarterly GDP growth, it is in numbers. So it is basically measuring the economic growth. The next feature is we say that it is short term or it is long term. We say that growth can be observed. It can be observed quarterly, it can be observed annually or over multiple years. So if we have to look at from the short term perspective, we can simply check the quarterly growth or maybe annually, and if we have to look at the long term perspective, then we can look at the growth over multiple years. So economists track the trends to see how fast or slow an economy is moving. The third feature, we say that it is output driven. Why? Because it focuses on the increased production in agriculture, manufacturing or services. For example, if India produces more steel or cars or textiles, softwares and electronic goods, then what is happening? The economic growth is increasing. So we say that it is always output driven. The more we produce the output, the more it is towards the growth. Then we say that it can occur without development as well. This is very important for exam, right? It can be achieved without structural change. How? We say that growth may rise even if people's quality of life does not improve. How? Again, to understand, let's say that a country may have high GDP but still face unemployment, poverty or inequality. So that is why we say that it can be achieved without structural change. एग्जाम्पल ले लेते हैं फिर से. लेट्स से दैट एक कंट्री है जो प्रोड्यूस कर रही है बहुत ज़्यादा ऑयल या मिनरल, उसकी जीडीपी तो उससे राइज होगी, लेकिन अगर उसकी इनकम जो है वो ऑर्डिनरी पीपल तक नहीं जा पा रही है तो फिर डेवलपमेंट एक्चुअली नहीं हो रहा है, राइट. देन वी से दैट it focuses on the increased production, or we can say that capital formation is the key to measure economic growth. Investment in machineries, factories, roads, power plants, technology, these are very, very essential for the growth of any country's economy. We see that countries like China, they have achieved fast growth. Why? Because of the high investment in their infrastructure. Right, so these are the features that determine the economic growth. So in summary, we can understand that economic growth is about more production, about more income and numerical expansion of the economy. I hope this is again understood. Now that we understand economic growth, let us move to a broader and more meaningful concept, that is economic development. It is said that economic development refers to growth plus improvement in the quality of life of people or structural changes, right? It is a qualitative concept as compared to economic growth. We have understood that economic growth was a quantitative concept. But when we talk about development or economic development, we say that it is a qualitative concept. It focuses not only on how much a country produces, but it also focuses on health, education, life expectancy, equality, human development or poverty reduction. Right. So in simple words, we can say that a country is economically developed when people live a better life, not just when GDP increases. For example, a rise in GDP does not mean much in people if people still do not have access to clean water, proper health care or even good education. So we have to say that development ensures that the benefit of growth reach to the common citizens. Let's take the example of countries like Norway, Switzerland, Japan, Canada. They may not have the highest GDP levels as compared to US or China, but they still rank very high in their HDI, that is Human Development Index. Why? Because their people enjoy better health, better education, their income is good, there is an equality in these countries and their living conditions are excellent. Thus, the economic development we say is a broader concept that reflects both the economic as well as the social progress. So now look at quickly, we'll see the difference between the growth and development. This is again one of the most important exam question, right? The first difference we will talk about in the growth and development is the nature. We say that growth is quantitative whereas development is qualitative. This is what we have just understood. Then when we talk about the focuses of growth and development, we see that growth focuses on increasing the output, whereas development focuses on improvement in the living standards. Now, when we talk about the time period, we see that growth is majorly measured in short term or long term sometime, but development is always long term and continuous. When we look at the measurement tools, we see that growth is measured by the GDP, GNP or per capita income, whereas development is measured by HDI, that is nothing but Human Development Index, or maybe literacy rate or health indicators or the poverty rate. And then finally, when we look at the structural changes, we say that growth may occur without changes in the structure, in the economic structure, but development requires a structural change, such as we see increase in industrialization, better infrastructure, gender equality, etc. So this is how we actually see the difference between the growth and development. In fact, if we take the example of Kerala, right, we may not have the highest GDP in India, but it ranks high in literacy, high on health and high on life expectancy. So it shows a strong economic development. So this distinction is crucial for exams, and it also helps to differentiate the output based progress for people oriented progress. Coming on to indicators of economic development, we say that to measure the development, economists use certain indicators that reflect the quality of life in any country. So let's understand the most important ones here. The first one is the HDI, Human Development Index. What is that? It is created by United Nations program, United Nations Development Program. We also call it as UNDP. It measures the development by using life expectancy, educational level, per capita income. We have just talked about countries like Norway, Switzerland and Australia. They score very high on HDI. The next indicator is per capita income. This shows the average income per person. So higher the per capita income generally means better living standards. For example, we see countries like USA and Canada, they have high per capita income. The third one is education and literacy rate. Again, we understand that higher literacy means better job opportunities and therefore higher productivity. For example, Kerala, Himachal Pradesh in India, they have high literacy. So they contribute to better social development. The next one is the poverty levels. Poverty or inequality levels, again, we say that a developing economy aims to reduce the poverty and narrow the income gaps. For example, government schemes we have such as PM Jan Dhan Yojana and Ujala Yojana. Why these schemes have been made? Because they aim to reduce the poverty and to improve the living conditions. The next indicator is health and nutrition indicators. These indicators include again life expectancy, infant mortality rate, access to healthcare, and these indicators show the overall well-being of the citizens of any country. Finally, we see the employment rates or the employment levels. Again, more employment means more income, and more income means higher standard of living, and higher standard of living means better economic development. We say that India ranks around 134 in HDI, and it shows growing but developing economy. Now we move to another important macroeconomic concept, that is business cycle. To understand its meaning, we say that the business cycle refers to the regular ups and downs in the level of economic activity over a period of time. So in simple words, the economy does not grow at a constant speed. Sometimes business activities expands and sometimes it slows down. These ups and downs are measured through GDP, employment, output, income, industrial productions or maybe consumer spendings as well. We have to observe that maybe a business cycle is repetitive, meaning that these phases keep happening again and again. Every economy, whether developed or developing, it goes through this business cycle. How can we forget the time of COVID? So if we look at this COVID example, before COVID-19, the Indian economy was in an expansion phase. But when in 2020, due to lockdowns, what had happened to the economy? The economy entered to a recessionary phase. And then in 21 to 23, the recovery is happening as the businesses are reopening. So we see that the business cycle affects the companies, it affects consumers, jobs, income levels, government policies. Understanding this business cycle helps managers make better production, pricing and financial decisions. This business cycle will be more clear as we look at the different phases of business cycles. So let's understand the 5 classical phases of business cycle. Again, it is an important long answer question which have been seen in the previous year examinations. So the very first phase is the expansion phase, or we also call it as boom phase. So you see here in the graph, we are expanding, we are moving upward. So during expansion, what happens to the economic activity? They rise. So when we say economic activities are rising, that means the GDP is increasing, there are more jobs in the market, demand is high. Because of demand, the production and the profit also rises. Banks lend more and consumers' confidence increases. Example, India's tech boom from 2003 to 2008. India has experienced a strong expansion that time. Coming on to the second phase, that is peak. So here, when we reach on the peak growth stage, this is the highest point of the economic activity. So what happens at this point? The production is at maximum. There is maximum economic activity. So prices rise. Therefore, there we say that there is inflation. Labor shortages appear. Business becomes highly optimistic. However, this overconfidence in high inflation, due to this high overconfidence in high inflation, the economy cannot grow forever. So after this peak, the cycle naturally moves down. Why? Because because of inflation, the purchasing power of the people reduces. When the purchasing power reduces, so the demand also decreases. So it is again a complete, it is going to take a complete circle. So once the peak is reached, then it starts going or moving downward. And this downward going phase is called as recession phase. Here recession means the economic slowdown. What is happening under this stage? We see that GDP falls for 2 consecutive quarters. Companies, they cut their production. Companies go on for layoffs and unemployment rise. Investment also reduces and the consumer spending drops. For example, in 2020, again due to COVID-19, the lockdown that had happened, the airlines, hotels, tourism, retail industry, it has suffered massive recession. Now after recession, we see that the economy goes somewhere in the negative phase, and this negative phase or further going down, this phase is called as depression. Depression is an extreme recession where we see very high unemployment, very low demand, business closes, falling prices and wages, and negative economic growth for a long time. These depressions are rare though, but the Great Depression of 1930s is a famous example. After this depression phase, we then again start recovering. So if we take an example of India, we had seen the recession phase, and right after recession we had started recovering. We did not go into the depression. That is why we say that this depression is very rare. Recovery happens when the economy starts improving. We again start going up. So the demand picks up, production increases, investment restarts, jobs returns in the market, and consumer confidence rises. Like similarly, that had happened after this post-pandemic. Industries like e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, and digital services, they had led India's recovery. So business cycles helps us understand the natural rhythm and fluctuations of any economy. This rhythm and the fluctuation going ups and or seeing ups and downs in the economy. Now the question comes that what are the causes of business cycle? Business cycles do not happen randomly. There are clear reasons why economies expand or contract. So let's understand the major causes. The first cause is changes in the investment levels. So whenever these businesses invest more in the machineries, factories and technology, the expansion happens. And when investment falls, recession occurs. Therefore, we say that investment is the most important driver that causes change in the business cycle. The second cause is the government policy. Tax cuts, subsidies, lower interest rates, these are the factors that generally brings a boost in the economic activity. But whenever there are higher taxes or there are strict monetary policies, it slows down the economy. Then the next is the wars or political instability. Whenever there are political instability, here we are talking about some uncertainties. So these uncertainties reduces business confidence, and this cause poor investment and the slow growth. Then another cause is the natural disaster. Again, like floods, pandemics, they disrupt the production and they create recession. We have an example, COVID-19. Then we also talk about the technological innovations. Whenever there are major innovations, it creates new industries. So there is a rise in the economy. For example, there is a rise of smartphone. It has created massive growth in the telecom or e-commerce or app-based industries. And finally, we see global economic conditions. If global demand slows, then export declines and so there is recession. On the other hand, if global economic grows and then the export rises and so we see the expansion. Now let's see that what is the effect of these business cycles. Business cycles have a wide impact on every part of the economy. Could be consumers, businesses, employees, investors and the government. So let's understand the key effect. We'll first see the effect on the economy. When we talk about economy, we see that GDP increases in expansions and it falls in recession. National income and savings, they vary, and government revenue either rises or falls depending on the phase that the economy is seeing. When we talk about the effect on the employment, then we say that expansion, in case of expansion there are more jobs and higher wages, and in case of recession there are layoffs and unemployment. The effect on business decisions, if we talk about, we say that production planning changes, inventory level rise or fall, prices, strategies shift, and the overall budget expand or shrink. Then if we talk about the effect on the investments, in case of expansion, there are higher investor confidence, stock market grows, and in case of recession, low investment and there is fall in the stock market. When we talk about businesses, we see that there is a change in the production planning or stock management or pricing strategy depending whether the economy is rising or is seeing its downside. Now we move to another major topic of macroeconomics, that is balance of payment, commonly known as BOP. The balance of payment is a systematic record of all economic transactions between a country and the rest of the world during a specific period, and this specific period, when I say, it is usually of 1 year. These transactions include imports and exports of goods, imports and exports of services, foreign investments, loans or donations, and foreign exchange reserves. Therefore, in simple words, we can understand that BOP shows how much money is coming into the country and how much money is going out. Every transaction is recorded. Either there is a credit wherein we say that money is coming into the country, or there is a debit when we say money is going out of the country. For example, we say that India exporting software to the US. So what is happening? Money is coming in. So there is a credit. And when India import the crude oils from Saudi Arabia, so money is going out. Therefore, we say debit. One important point here that is to be understood is that by defining BOP, always we say that BOP always balances mathematically, because every transaction is recorded twice. Here again we follow the accountancy double entry system. But individual account may show a surplus or a deficit. Understanding BOP helps us to analyze whether a country is financially strong or whether it is facing economic pressure. So it always follows the accounting identity. There is a double entry system. Let's understand the various components of BOP. The balance of payment has 3 major components, and this is again very important from exam point of view. The first component is the current account. This includes all transactions related to goods, services, income and transfers. The first thing that comes under it is merchandise trade, or the trade of goods. All the imports and exports of physical goods that are happening. Example, India exports textile, software, machinery. It imports crude oil, electronic gold. So they all comes under merchandise trade. Next is invisible, or we also call it as services. Like we have IT services, banking, tourism, transport, consultancy. Like India earns huge foreign exchange through software services. So credit in the current account. The third one is the income, or the investment income, especially we call it as dividends, income through dividends or interests. So here the income is coming from dividends, interest, the profit earned abroad. Like TCS earns profit in the US, so there is a credit, and an Indian invests abroad and earns interest, again there is a credit. Then we have transfers or remittances. Any kind of a remittance, gifts, donations, grants, they all come under transfers. Like money sent by an Indian working in the Gulf country is a major credit for India. The current account shows whether the country earns enough from the goods and services or not. The next component of BOP is the capital account. This records all the capital transactions, such as foreign investments, we say FDI and FPI. FDI is long-term investment, like into factories, plants or offices. Like Apple suppliers, they are setting up the manufacturing unit in India. So there is a FDI inflow. FPI is foreign portfolio investment. It is short-term investment in the stocks and bonds. For example, any foreign investor buying shares in the Indian stock market, that comes under FPI. The next that comes under capital account is loans. External commercial borrowings that are happening. the IMFs, the World Bank loans, or the NRI deposits. So they all come under capital loans. So if more foreign capital enters the country, the capital account is in surplus. The last one is the official reserve account or the banking capital. There is a RBI's foreign exchange holding. It includes gold reserves, foreign currencies reserves, or special drawings. Right? So if BOP is in deficit, what does the RBI do? It may use its reserves to stabilize the economy. Together, all these three components, they give a complete international financial position of any country. Now let's understand that why current account deficit is there in India. A very frequently asked concept in exams, and we see it in the newspapers, that is CAD or current account deficit. What does it mean? We say that CAD occurs when a country's imports are greater than its exports. In simple words, more money is going out of the country than coming in through the current account transactions. Why CAD occurs? Let's understand the major causes. The first cause is high import of crude oil. India imports more than 80% of its oil requirements. So when global oil price rises, India's import bill increases sharply. And this is the biggest reason for India's CAD. Also, we see that there is high import of gold and electronics. Then the another reason is low export competitiveness. So if Indian exports do not grow at the same rate, the gap widens. And finally, we see the weak domestic currency. When the rupee weakens, import become costlier and thus increasing the current account deficit. For example, India often faces CAD due to heavy oil imports. Thus, we say that CAD is a major macroeconomic challenge for developing economies, specifically if we talk about from India's perspective. In the previous slide, we understood the concept of balance of payment. Now, let us dive deeper into an extremely important part of the capital account, that is foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment, FDI and FPI. These two terms appear frequently in news, in exams, and in corporate discussions. Let's talk about FDI first. It refers to long-term investments made by the foreign companies in the productive asset of another country. For example, it includes setting up factories, establishing offices, acquiring plants, or long-term business operations. What does FDI brings along with it? It brings technology, employment, managerial expertise, and stable capital inflow. For example, we are currently seeing that Apple's manufacturing partners like Foxconn and Wistron, they are investing in India. Similarly, Hyundai and Kia setting up automobile plants in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. We have seen Amazon investing in warehouses and logistics centers in India. So what is happening with them? The FDI strengthens the economy because it is a long-lasting and stable. To understand FPI, we say that FPI refers to a short-term investment made by the foreign investors. For example, Indian stock market in Sensex or Nifty, mutual funds, government and corporate bonds. We say that FPI is also called the hot money. Why? Because it can enter and exit the country quickly. Now let's understand that what are the causes of BOP disequilibrium. Balance of payment disequilibrium actually means that the BOP is not stable. One account may show a surplus while the other shows a deficit. So let's understand the major causes And we say that again, this is a common exam question. The first cause is excessive imports, over dependence on the imports. When a country imports more than its export, the current account goes into deficit. For example, India imports large quantities of crude oil, gold, and electronics. Another problem is inflation. If domestic prices rise, export become expensive and less competitive. Imports may become cheaper in comparison, worsening the BOP. Next is the population growth. Higher population increases demand for goods. Therefore, we have to import more, and so there is a pressure on BOP. Another one is the global recession. So when global demand falls, India's exports reduces. Like during global slowdowns, textile, IT and auto component export fall. Another cause is political instability. We understand that unstable political conditions reduce the foreign investments and it increases the capital outflow. And finally, natural disasters for which nobody can do anything. So events like floods, earthquakes, COVID-19, it has disrupted the production and it has reduced the exports. So we understand that this disequilibrium can occur due to both internal and external factors. Understanding these reasons helps the policy makers take the right and corrective steps. What are the methods to correct these BOP deficits? When a country faces a BOP deficit, it must take corrective measures to restore the stability. So what are these key methods? The first one is the export promotion. The government can provide the subsidies to exporters. It can reduce the export duties. It can encourage Make in India, like we are seeing it, to improve the product quality and explore new international markets, which is what is happening in India these days. The next method could be import substitution. Find out the substitute of the import, producing domestically instead of importing it. This reduces the foreign exchange outflows. For example, India is encouraging mobile manufacturing and semiconductor production to reduce the import dependence. Next is devaluation of the currency. The government can lower the value of its currency related to the foreign currencies. And this makes exports cheaper, imports costlier, and it ultimately improves the BOP. For example, what did China do? China's currency strategy was to boost the exports, so it does the same. Next one is the fiscal measures, like government can increase the taxes on luxury imports, it can reduce the unnecessary public spending, provide incentives for export industries. Then we look at attracting FDI, encourage the multinational companies to invest in India. It helps in bringing the capital into the country, it creates employment, it reduces the pressure on BOP, and finally strengthen the capital account. Then increasing foreign exchange reserves. RBI can buy foreign currency during the surplus period to build the reserves for deficit years. So in summary, we see that BOP correction requires a mix of economic policies. Maybe export promotions, currency management, fiscal discipline, attracting the foreign investments. So these are the methods by which the BOP deficit can be corrected. Now we will quickly move to the last major topic of Unit 5, that is inflation, a concept that affects everyone, be it students, households, businesses, and even the government policies. Inflation means a continuous and sustained rise in the general price level of goods and services over a period of time. So in simple words, when the same goods cost more than before, we say inflation has occurred. If last year you paid rupees 40 for milk and now it costs 52, that is nothing but inflation. Inflation reduces the purchasing power of the money. So your rupees 100 buys fewer things today than it did earlier. We say that inflation is measured by two major indices in India. The first one is CPI, that is Consumer Price Index. This measures retail prices, which is used for inflation rate, and the next one is the Wholesale Price Index or WPI, which measures the wholesale prices. Inflation influences interest rates, government policies, business decisions, and even the stock market. So understanding inflation is essential for every business manager. Inflation can occur due to different reasons. Let us understand the major types, and this is very important exam topic. First is the demand pull inflation. It occurs when demand is more than supply. So consumer wants to buy more, but producers cannot supply enough. For example, in festive seasons, the gold demand rises, and so gold prices also increases. Next one is a cost push inflation. It occurs when production cost increases. So producers pass this higher cost to the customers through the increased prices. For example, when we see increase in petrol prices, that is happening because transport cost rises and finally the food prices increase. The next one is the imported inflation. It occurs when imported goods become expensive. Since India imports crude oil, electronics, fertilizers and machineries, global price hikes increase the domestic inflation. For example, if global crude oil price rise, India's fuel price also increases and inflation rise across the economy. The last one is the galloping or hyperinflation. Very rapid increase in price, often more than 50% per month. This happens due to excessive printing of money. This had happened in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's inflation crossed 200 million%. Venezuela also faced the extreme hyperinflation in late 2010s. So these are the various types of inflation. Now let's look at that. What are the effects of inflation? It does affect every part of the economy. But we will talk about the major effects, and this is again a very important concept. The first effect is on the consumers. Whenever we see that there is reduced purchasing power, the savings lose their value and there is difficulty in maintaining the household budgets. That means there is an effect on the consumers. So if monthly grocery expenses rise from rupees 2000 to 3200, then households feel the pressure of inflation. The second effect is onto the producers. It is happening in the moderate inflation. This moderate inflation increases the business profits, but high inflation creates uncertainty in the planning and production cost rises that affect the margins. For example, when steel prices rise, automobile companies like Tata Motors and Mahindra, they also revise the car prices. And then we see the effect on the economy. When there is income inequality grows, export becomes costlier, import becomes attractive, currency value depreciates and interest rates rise. For example, high inflation focuses the RBI to increase the interest rates. It affects the EMIs and the business borrowings. Inflation is not always bad. Mild inflation is necessary for the growth, but high inflation harms the economy. That is something that you should always remember. Now, to maintain the price stability, inflation must be controlled using various measures. These include monetary measures, fiscal measures, and there are other measures. Talking about monetary measures, these measures are controlled by RBI, and these are the most powerful tools to control inflation. The first is increase in repo rate. When bank this RBI increases the repo rate, the borrowing becomes expensive. So people spend less and inflation decreases. Then is increase in CRR and SLR. Banks, they need to keep more money with RBI. So it reduces the money supply and so it controls inflation. Coming on to fiscal measures, these are controlled by government. So reducing the public expenditure, increasing direct and indirect taxes, controlled unnecessary subsidies, managing the deficit financing, they all come under fiscal measures. These measures reduce the excess spending and the demand in the economy. And then finally, there are other measures like import essential goods, increased production, anti-hoarding laws, right? So this importing essential goods is when supply shortage causes the inflation, the government import the goods to stabilize the prices. Increasing production is nothing but encouraging the industries to produce more so that it helps reduce supply side inflation. So to say that inflation control require tight monetary policies, responsible fiscal policies and effective supply management. Now to summarize, we will quickly see that whatever we have learned in this unit. We have learned the concept of growth and development. We have seen that what are business cycle phases, how BOP works and what is its structure, what is inflation, its causes, its effect and how to control inflation. These help in understanding the macroeconomic behavior and the policy decisions. Although I have been telling you that what are the important questions during the explanation of the concepts, but still have a quick look on the important exam questions. Thank you so much for learning with BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. The next video is coming up, that is marathon class on business law. We'll be starting with a new subject. Do like, share and subscribe for more marathon classes. Thank you so much for watching.